All right, so this game is round 5 against Raymond Chu, 21-21. Um, and in this game, we get another bishop b5 closed Sicilian. And my opponent goes for the capturing of the bishop on b5 line. So here I knew d4, and I knew that if takes on d4, then queen takes d4, and that was the end of my preparation. Here instead, move bishop d7. Um, so I played the move a4 because I thought that a4, if ever a6, I can just drop the knight back then and eventually play a5 there. And if I play a5 there, I'll have a uh, fixed structure where black's pawns will be on b7 and a6, and mine will be on a5, and I'll sort of be this pawn on b7 won't be able to advance, and maybe I'll have the b6 square for a knight or bishop later down the line. So I play a4. Maybe it's better to just drop the knight back, develop naturally, and then potentially I'll want to castle long. That's a possibility in this position. Take with the queen, a6, knight c3. You can imagine I could have this position with pawns still on a4 and a7. Maybe then I would be able to develop my bishop and castle long. Here, castling long is not advisable because I have already pushed my pawn. E6, I castle, knight f6, and now I play a5. So my idea with a5 is actually to either play knight a4, knight b6, which is a little harder because the queen can take, or I'm going to play knight d2, knight c4, knight b6, which I end up doing in the game. Once I get the knight to b6, I cover control over c8, and if c8 is controlled, then the rook on a8 doesn't really have a way to get into the game. So bishop b7, knight d2, castles, knight c4, bishop c6, knight b6. So black has played natural moves, castling, getting developed, putting the bishop on this post-up square on c6. But in the meantime, rook b8 only move. In the meantime, I have gotten my knight on b6. I've sort of taken over the c file with this move, and I still have both breaks, both central pawn pushes under control. If d5, I will meet that with e5, and I'll get a kingside attack with the advanced pawn, and the bishop will be bad. And if e5, then I can simply play queen d3, and I'll have the d5 square available for my pieces. You can imagine a scenario where all the pieces get traded on d5, and it's just a dark square bishop endgame, and these pawns fixed on dark squares, especially the backward pawn on d6. I'll just bring my rooks to the file. Bishop can use the square that I've given it to prevent rooks from going to support it. I can put the pawn on c3, making it so the open file is not as useful for black. So e5 would be positionally very dubious, I thought. So I have both of these moves under control. So now I just decide, okay, I'll just bring my bishop out, connect my rooks. The point of bishop g5 is not really to take the knight. The point of bishop g5 is to get the rooks to the middle, maybe even put the bishop on g3 voluntarily without even h6 would help me do this, but even sometimes, like in the game, actually, I play bishop h4 eventually. Queen c7, rook developing to the center, rook b d8, and now here I play bishop h4. And here I felt that the position is such that I can just play, since I have both of these central breaks fixed, I can just play moves. I can just play building moves. My position can slowly be improved. I'll bring the other rook to the d file. I'll play h3 and make some luft. Bishop g3 maybe. Because black has really no plan. Bishop e8 shows that there's really no plan. Rook d1, bishop goes back to c6. H3, just a building move. And now my opponent plays knight e8. And my first thought was that, okay, the reason I kept the bishop on this diagonal for so long is if the knight ever moved, I thought that I could just take the bishop. I thought knight e8 would not be a good move because I could take the bishop. However, after I take the bishop, um, Black's position is very cramped right now, right? I have control over the central breaks. I have my pieces in active squares. As soon as I trade the bishops, queen takes bishop, then black can start to get active with f5. And this is something that I didn't properly evaluate in the game. I took on e7. Maybe in retrospect, bishop g3 might be better. Um, it's unclear. I would not be surprised if bishop takes e7 is the best move. But after bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, black sort of gets out. So if I were to play this game again, probably bishop g3 would be played. And I would just continue building the position from that point. It's hard to see exactly what I do next, but maybe I move this knight. I transfer the knight somewhere. Not totally sure what I'm doing. Maybe I can bring this knight back to c4, support this one. Um, I'm not sure. But bishop g3 I think might be a little bit more, it keeps black more cramped. After takes, rook e3 probably not the most accurate move because it allows this f5. And here I spent a lot of time looking at e5. I had a pretty significant time edge actually by the time this position came around, and then I spent all of it in this position because I saw black is getting active. If I take, then rook takes, which is what I ended up doing, which taking felt like the most natural move, so I very quickly looked at takes, rook takes b4, and I said, okay, is there anything better? And I started looking at the move e5. e5 I really wanted to play because if e5, first of all, the pawn is pinned, so you cannot take because I'll take the rook. In addition to that, if e5, f4, I was starting to look at taking on d6 there. I saw that if rook takes d6, I will have knight c8. Fork, I think winning, if I calculated correctly, I think that is a winning move. E5, f4, I could even just play the move rook ed3 there and just say, okay, yes, you can play f3, but I'll just play g3. You sort of blocked your bishop from joining an attack. I was maybe worried about queen g5 in some positions, like let's say e5, f4, rook d3, even just queen g5 immediately is a little bit scary. Um, so I think that was the reason that I didn't do this. And then the other thing is e5, f4 if takes. I wasn't sure what to do on knight takes. I thought maybe I can play rook d3 there, but the position is it's very difficult for me to see these things, to calculate things, and I just already was feeling like I wasn't calculating things properly, and so in the end I just took, after a long time looking at e5, I just took the pawn and played b4 like I saw, and then my opponent played a very strong move, queen f7, and at this point we're on move 23, and both of us are under 15 minutes, so we're in pretty significant time pressure. He probably has the better side of it because black's position is opening up, and the f2 pawn is hit, rook f4 is threatened. So I have to play. I think I play a good move, queen d2. Knight c7. I put the knight in the middle. These next moves, up until the time control, are probably not going to be the most accurate because we don't have time. Just a game of terrible time management from both players. Queen g6. I play rook g3. Queen h5. Rook e1. d5. The knight on g5. I'm not totally sure where it should go and why. It seems actually, from what I learned, like it seems maybe knight c5 would have been a better square because on g5 it's sort of a tactical target. It can be taken. It can't really be taken, but it can be attacked and maybe forced to move back to a non-ideal square. Maybe I should maybe bring it back to d3 where it can go to f4, maybe even sit on e5. This would make more sense probably. This move also not necessary, f4. What can be said about it? I'm just time pressure makes bad moves. F4 might not be a bad move, but it's a weakness, and I really need to not be making weaknesses in this position. Queen h6, c4, helping him open his bishop. I'm just playing moves. Queen f6, I take, knight takes, I saw knight e4, he moves back, I take. I put myself in a pin. I mean, the f4 pawn was hit. The knight is attacked. Now my rook is pinned. Rook c8 is a good move. I get rook f2, and if it was my turn, I could play knight c5, and maybe on knight c5, um, uh, I'm in time to put pressure on black's position, but the move rook c4 sort of shuts down that idea. Um, okay, now I play knight c3. Black takes on b4, which may or may not be a good move. It feels like it can't be like a bad move, but it might not be the most accurate move. But it does allow this. I throw in a check. It allows this rook endgame. This was forced, I believe, after queen takes b4, because knight takes d5. Uh, Knight takes d5 should force a rook endgame. The check. The purpose of the check is that I want this. I don't want this e pawn to become passed. So if I take here, then maybe takes here, uh, then this e pawn is actually passed pawn. Whereas if in this position, it's still blocked. Rook b1, rook c7, rook b2 takes that one, and we get this rook endgame. And by the way, uh, this was my 40th move. This was his 40th move, and so move 41, rook b2, rook db2, and we get this endgame, rook endgame, down one pawn. Okay. Now I'm thinking that I can play this for a while. It's difficult for white to make a draw, but I thought, okay, I'll bring my king. He cuts my king off, so I put the rook behind the pawn, h6. Here I play the move g4. G4, the idea, okay, if you take on h3, I can take on a6, and now it's a 2-on-3. Much easier to draw that, I think, than this. But g5. Okay, g5, things are getting a little tough. I found a way. So here I took, and if king takes, my plan was to just go hitting all these pawns. Whichever one he defends, one should be undefended, I thought. Um, but pawn takes, so I start with king g2, a5, rook a6, setting up this idea that I have. Here I have an idea. My idea is I know that um, there's a rook endgame defense that works with there's a rook endgame defense that works even with them having an extra h pawn. Unfortunately, I didn't know the defense particularly well before going for it, but I don't regret my decision to do this. h4 takes g5. If black doesn't take this pawn, I'm just going to play g6, g7 until eventually the king needs to take, and I'm basically trading the g for the e pawn. King f5. And now I probably see. I don't know this yet, but probably if I were to be, it's hard to get it still. I'm not sure exactly when I would have it, but here in this position, king on c4. Here, my best try would be to play a check. This position might be drawn. If a move such as king b5 is played, now I can play rook f. Oh no, I have to check. I have to check. I keep checking, and then when the king comes close enough, I play rook h4. And the idea is I'm attacking the pawn laterally from the side, so that not to allow the rook to come out. If the rook is allowed to come to b3 and then a3 happens, then I really don't have a chance to hold. But I can hold this position potentially with the rook. The only issue now, I think it's already if king c5, I can play the move rook f4, I think. I think this position should be a draw now. Because whenever the king gets to touching the pawn, I can check from the side. And as soon as we get to a position like this, I just put the rook on, let's say, b4 square. Just some square that hits the pawn from the side, but also allows checks. So then let's say that a check occurs. Here, I might even be able to consider taking a pawn. Taking the pawn here. I don't think it's necessary to do this, but it might just make it simpler. Probably king h1 is fine. And the idea is, whenever the pawn goes to a3, I play rook b3. Check, sure. King goes. And now the final idea is that whenever the pawn goes to a2, now I can get the rook behind the pawn, and this is a draw, because now the rook will never be able to come out with a check. You can get your king closer, but I'll just play rook a8. I'll have checks from behind forever. And if you don't play a2, you try to get your king in, then I play rook f3, and if you get your king to touch the pawn, I just check from the side. I always check from the side. And as soon as you get kind of close to my rook, I just play rook over here. And this rook endgame should be a draw. I would not be surprised if it was a draw in the game if I played the move rook h4 here instead of rook a8. Rook a8 allows this. This is no longer close. Black just wins. I resigned in this position because it's just going to a3, rook comes over, makes a bridge, and he promotes. So very unfortunate that I didn't quite know the rook endgame well enough in this game, because I do think that there was a chance to draw at some point in the rook endgame, and we're about to figure that out. Also, we get to look at a bunch of time scramble moves and just see who is instinctively playing better moves. Probably him, if I had to bet. But okay, we get this position. Bishop d7. Okay, so yeah, knight c3 and a4 are both moves. Knight c3 probably with the plan of castling along is a little bit better, but a4 is not a bad move. Takes, queen takes, a6, knight back, e6, and now knight d2 already a move, but I just castle here, and now I play a5. So a5, I guess, is not the most accurate move. I should play e5. e5 with the idea of taking, knight takes, and I guess that's just a pleasant position. I don't need to rush a5. If black ever plays a5, then the b5 square will be weak, and b6 is also a weakening move. So I don't have to rush playing a5. It's not important to rush that. But it's not. It doesn't. I guess it isn't a good move. Bishop e7, knight d2, castles, knight c4. So this plan is good. Knight b6. Rook needs to go to b8. So we now have this position, which I thought was good for white. The machine seems to think that it's roughly equal. Bishop g5, actually now it says d5 is playable. On d5, I was just going to play e5. Is there a problem with this? Knight d7, I was just going to take, queen takes. I guess the knight on d7 is hit, and if I play knight a4, what happens if I play knight a4? Bishop takes a4. I guess I'm losing my square. I'm losing my blockade on these squares, so it's just going to be takes, queen takes. Now I get the rook to c8, c3, but this endgame now, my pawn on a5 might be a little bit overextended now that there's no piece that can sit on b6 square. Okay, so that's good to know. That was my sort of intention. Instead, queen c7, rook fe1 is a good move. Rook d8, bishop h4, top move. I'm very happy about that. Bishop h4 felt like a very good improving move that could be played in this position. That just felt like any move can be played. So bishop h4, bishop e8, rook d1 is good. Yeah, here f3. So I was looking at f3. I was a little bit scared about the bishop coming to c5 and getting on this diagonal. But I guess f3, it solidifies the center pawn a little bit better than h3 does. Um, h3 also a fine move, but maybe am I playing g4? Probably not. Maybe the bishop wants to come back in the game this way to b6. It's unclear exactly. So okay, knight, and now this moment. I have knight d5, some knight d5. I was looking at a knight going to d5 in the game. Knight d5, I thought uh takes with the pawn. Oh, well, if takes with the pawn, I can throw in taking on e7 and then taking on d5 and then right. So for example, here if takes with the pawn, I can throw in takes on e7, queen takes c7, e takes d5, hitting the queen, hitting the bishop. If the queen moves to, let's say, c7, takes, b takes, and yeah, the material is equal. I still have this very nice knight, and actually queen c4 or queen d3, both of these moves actually hit the pawn on a6, and it's very difficult to defend. Queen b7, and now I guess I can just stack up the rooks. Um, it's not obvious to me. I mean, it is clear that white should have a little bit of an edge with the passive knight on f8 and the very active knight on b6. Also, the pawn on d6 might be a little weak. a6 and c6, all these black pawns are a little bit weak. So I think if I see all of that, I probably go for it. It's just a lack of calculating critical lines probably is the issue here. Instead, I take on e7. Bishop g3 also a move though. Bishop g3. After looking at the position after the game, that's sort of what I had settled on as being a good move. Probably nothing better than just for the knight to come back to f6, which would be a good inclusion of bishop g3. That's where it sort of wants to be anyway. So, and white has an edge, for sure. But okay, bishop takes, queen takes. Rook e3 is a little bit slow. f5 is a good move. And now he's breaking out. So I need to, yeah, e5, okay. e5, f4, and what is now the move? Let's look at this. Takes on d6, I think knight takes. Okay, just any move. I thought rook takes d6, knight c8. Move queen g5. Yeah, so this would be extremely problematic. This is why this is the sort of reason that I didn't calculate that I didn't play the move even after calculating for so long because it just felt like I was going to be missing something. Um but I can rook e d3 is a move and then queen g5 here. Now I could just play knight e4. This was not easy for me to find. There's a lot of things going on around the position that are unpleasant to look at. Um, and I just was, it's just, I don't know, it was just a lot to calculate. This is something I need to get better at, is calculating these sorts of lines. Um, because, I mean, really, rook e3, I should do something to prevent f5 from being so strong, but I don't even know how to prevent it. I guess I just need to play knight d5, and then after bishop takes, pawn takes, and play that position, because that position is going to be better for me than once this breakout happens. But okay, takes is not good. Now after b4, I thought queen f7 was a strong move. Apparently even knight c7, any move is good. Knight e4, bishop takes e4, queen takes e4, rook takes f2. What is this? What is happening here? Bishop takes e4. Oh, I have rook takes e4 as well, which does defend the thing, but how does this work? Oh, queen takes e6. Okay. So yeah, a lot of moves missed in this area of the game. Now we're in time pressure though, so a lot of moves are expected to be missed. Queen d2, knight c7, knight e4, queen g6, rook g3 felt good for me. Queen h5, rook e1 is a good move. d5, Knight c5 is a better move. Yeah, this is sort of what I figured. Knight g5 feels like I'm sort of just putting it in the way. It's sort of tactical target. Rook e8, defending the pawn. F4 also. I mean, I guess F4 is a fine move. It's just creating more weaknesses. C4 here, also not a very obvious move. I think Knight g5 is the culprit of why the position is very difficult to play now. Queen h6, c4 I play here, which is actually a good move. Kind of crazy to think. Queen f6, now I have to play this move king h2. This move is difficult to play. Instead, I take on d5, which actually is another fine move with the idea of knight e4. I guess I'm supposed to take first. Knight e4 first. I thought queen f8 was the right move, but okay. Takes. I don't know. Rook f3. Rook f3 is a fine move. Rook g4 is the move that's preferred, but I wanted to be able to get my rook back in the game on the second rank. Rook f2. Rook c4, I think is, yeah, it's an important move. Otherwise, I'll have knight c5 next turn. Apparently, even here, I should play knight c5, which is kind of an incredible thing to do. I guess it's not that incredible, but it's yeah, rook takes f4. I just play rook e2 and I pile up against e6, and it's all okay somehow. This move is not so good. Bishop c6. That move was not on my radar, but it just keeps the bishop. Here, yeah, it did feel, when I played this move, it did feel like black should have something. I did have the feeling that I was missing something, and that, queen takes b4 is sort of like, then I get to bail into some rook endgame, whereas there should be some move here. I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but it felt like there should be something. Bishop c6 is a very strong move. Now I get to bail. Knight e7 check, maybe not the most accurate. Knight f6 check, actually, very interesting move. If rook takes f6, then my a pawn actually might be able to stay on the board, which is kind of interesting. Maybe I should have done this one. I didn't like doing that, but it's probably better than what I did. Knight e7, king f7, takes. Rook b1. Move rook b5. Yeah. Well, this is the 40th move, so it's still time scramble. And then here, after rook db2, this is where the game. Now we made the 40th move, and I'm in this pawn down rook endgame that I have to somehow hold. Yeah. So now we have this position. So I survived, which is very nice to survive, playing some pretty important moves with not very much time. One try for black in there. But okay, rook a3 is good. Rook a7. Now I play g4. G5 is an issue. Instead of g4, maybe I should just try to sit. If I just sit, it's sort of difficult for black to be able to break through. Without risking. But okay, takes, king g2, here, rook a6, a4. And now, what does it think of my try? It thinks not a good try. Takes, here, takes, rook e6. But I do think that I got a draw at some point when I had my rook on h8 here, right here. It's not a draw. Here's not a draw at all. But here, if rook h4, check. King b3, I think, is the way. Rook h3. King here. Rook h4. King b3, rook. King b2. This is the secret. Here, and now this very crafty move. Rook a2. This is the way for black to win, even with this defense. This is very difficult to find, though. So if I play rook h4 in a game, it's possible that black may have, in this position, not found king b2, Probably been this position would have been found actually. It's sort of findable by force, by process of elimination, but definitely Rook H4 would be a much better try than what happened in the game, which was sort of immediate resignation in less than 10 moves. So lessons learned. I learned a lot about this Rook endgame after this game, which I think is going to be very useful in future games. Um, the idea of holding from the side, uh, checking from the back, the idea of once the pawn gets pushed, you just stay with it from the side until it gets to the second rank, and then you can go behind when the rook has no more squares. I think I was correct to go for this sort of position. The way that I got here was maybe a little bit rushed. G4, I think, is the culprit of why this position, when I got to it, was lost. Um, but yeah, there were definitely lessons learned. It's still an unfortunate loss because I did seem like it felt like I had a pretty good position at certain points in the game. Then I had a good time advantage too. I spent all my time looking at something that I wasn't confident playing, couldn't calculate it through, and then got into time pressure myself, played some reasonable moves, but not quite enough. And then had chances in the rook end game, but it was never um I didn't show the good enough technique to make the draw. So now back on an even score, had several uh, unfortunate games in a row. I've had good positions in every game, except round four, except the previous round. Had good positions in every other game, winning almost in every other game, and still only on an even score. Um, so yeah, this is the halfway point in the tournament. Now there's 4 rounds to go. Um, my problem, as we will see in the following games, is that my endurance, I sort of just ran out of steam. So yeah, we'll see in the next few games what that means. But yeah, stick around for the next video. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you are enjoying in the comments, and I will see you next time. Thanks.